Welcome to CJ's Chatbox. I am so excited today. I have this special lady that I have met from church. Her name is Kathy Rath. So, welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad that you were able to come by and share a little bit about your life. You've got a very exciting life. Still going, thank you. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised, I guess, when I saw, first of all, you're in my class every Tuesday. So, of course, I see you, but I didn't know till I saw it in the Globe that you were singing for Veterans Day or Memorial Day or something.
Both.
Because you were with the American Legion, so that you worked there. And that's when I found out about the fact that you were a nurse for 28 years in the Navy.
Right.
So I want to go back to where you're from and how that all got started. So where were you born?
Okay. I was born in Iowa, born near Sioux City in the western part of the state, and from age 4 on lived near Dubuque on the eastern side of the state, 7 miles from Field of Dreams, if everybody knows about the baseball movie. So went there many, many times. Anyway, grew up there, went to school there, and then I went to nursing school in Dubuque. And it was a general nursing program. We had generally 12-week rotations into the different specialties like pediatrics, psychiatric, OB, that kind of thing. So that's what the education consisted of.
Before you got into nursing, though, you, if I remember correctly, your parents were both in the education.
Teachers.
And was that possibly the first route you were going to go, was to get into education and be a teacher, or?
No, I never had a desire to be a teacher because I saw that every night they had homework.
Oh,
they came home.
The work is never done.
They came home with papers to correct or tests to make out or whatever, and I thought, I don't want that. Little did I think through. I didn't think it through, though, that nurses work 24-hour shifts, days and nights, whereas teachers got to work in the daytime.
And they had summers off.
Yes, I should have thought that all through, but I didn't.
So, was there anybody in your family that had been in nursing or
No, nobody was in nursing, but there was a lady in our church when I grew up that was a good friend of my parents. She was an RN, and they used her to kind of convince me that might be a good path to follow.
Did your parents then, because they used her kind of to get you interested, did they see something about you that would fit the nursing field? Did they ever say that or not?
I don't think so per se, but
maybe just wanted to find a path.
My parents and most of my aunts and uncles were teachers. I mean, so at Christmas time and holidays when they all got together, that's all they talked about was school and the kids and what they were learning and all that. So,
but the plus side of that then is the fact that since you decided to go in nursing, there was a nursing school not far from where you lived with your parents.
30 miles, yeah.
Oh, gee. So did you stay at home or did you go to a dormitory?
Oh, no, I lived in a dorm.
Oh, you did?
The whole time. And went home maybe about every third weekend or so. I didn't have my own car while I was in school. So my parents had to come one of them had to come and pick me up for the weekend and take me back.
How many were in a dorm? How many gals would be together?
In a dorm. Well, it was a small nursing school. We started off with 24 in my class. We graduated 19.
Okay.
The rest got kicked out for poor grades and alcohol.
Boy. Too much partying.
That's what happened to some of them.
Yeah.
And so the other classes were about the same. So, 25, 75 maybe at the most in the dorm.
Okay. And did you kind of like dorm living? I mean, was it fun being, because you're not an only child, but the only girl, right?
The only girl. Yeah, I had one brother.
Yeah.
It was all right. I didn't particularly care for it, no, but we had either individual or semi-private rooms. It wasn't a dorm like
I thought it was
20 beds
bunk beds.
Oh, no.
Like a barracks.
No bunk beds or anything.
So.
It was single rooms or double rooms.
Okay.
And at first I had a roommate that was a smoker, so I quickly got that changed. So.
Well, in those days, too, they allowed you to smoke. I mean, now we're so used to nobody smokes on the beach even.
Right.
But in those days, it was everywhere.
So anyway, I didn't have to live with that too long.
So you said that when you got into it, there was like 12 weeks in different...
12 weeks seemed to be the typical time frame for some of the specialties. We took a lot of science classes at the University of Dubuque, too. So anatomy, physiology was there, microbiology, chemistry, sociology, those were all university courses too. So those were for a whole year.
So you had a nursing facility here, but also the college where you took classes.
Right. We worked at the hospital, which was like next door to the dorm.
I see.
So that's where we did our medical type stuff. But we took at least 17 to 18 hours of credit every period, every
You didn't
quarter.
have time to party, did you?
No, I didn't.
Honest to Pete, that's a lot of, you're on.
It's a lot of hours.
On call, not on call, but you're on the floor, and then you're also having to keep up with your studies.
Yeah.
So,
a lot.
Again, do you feel like you're thrown into the water and you learn how to swim, meaning that the things that you're learning, it isn't a gradual thing, it's just like, boom, you're on the floor doing whatever in a hospital? Was that kind of how you felt, or was it?
We started really early. I compared a lot of what we were doing to, I did have a cousin that went into nursing school a couple years before I did. She went to Iowa City, which is a 4-year baccalaureate program.
Okay.
And they didn't even get inside the hospital till their second year, till their sophomore year.
All studies and no actual hands-on?
Yeah, we as freshmen at my school got in like at least the second month of school, September, October, I think, that we were in the hospital working. And they gave us, comparable jobs. At first, you're emptying bedpans and giving baths. I mean, it's the basic stuff. And then as you learn more in the classroom, then you do more complicated procedures.
Right, but still, because nursing would have never been something I could have done. I can't even stand when somebody draws blood. My knees get weak and I just have to shut my eyes, so I'm a chicken. So just the idea of, and then I don't know the names of my medications that I take. It starts with an F, or they're so long and they're so involved that I don't bother with them. So if they say, what are you taking? I take it at night and it starts with R. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so then you have a generic name to worry about and a brand name to worry about, right?
My stars.
Both.
So, and then you had 12 weeks of psych as well. Now, explain what kind of psych patients, and was this in the hospital then?
For two of our specialties, we went away from Dubuque. So the psychiatric was at the State Mental Hospital in Independence, Iowa, which is rougher than the hospital I was at as a student. Wasn't really geared towards psych, and also they were not geared toward pediatrics. So pediatrics, we went to Milwaukee Children's Hospital.
So you did move around. Now when you went, so there was 12, so then you're in Milwaukee, so do they have you staying in hotels or dorms?
They had a dorm next to Children's Hospital.
Okay.
So we stayed in a dorm in Milwaukee, and we stayed in a dorm at Independence. They also had pastor interns at Independence, which was interesting. Men that were going to be pastors of various denominations. Wow. So they stayed in the dorm also.
Oh, how interesting that they would put the two. So, it's important if this is the path that nursing takes, that they would have a facility, a dorm, so that as you come and go, those are your 12 weeks, and then somebody else comes. Did you ever get to go with some of the gals you already knew from your dorm, or did you always go with new girls to these different 12-week?
It was the same group. It was the same group all the time, yeah. So, they didn't always take our whole class. It wasn't like all 24 of us initially went to Milwaukee or whatever.
I see.
No, they took part of the class, but we were subdivided into smaller groups. I had a clinical group of 5 or 6 of us, and so we did all our rotations together, whether it was Milwaukee or Independence or Dubuque. It didn't matter.
I would think that having someone that you're kind of familiar with and how you guys relate to each other, that would kind of make things go smoother as well, whatever you were doing then. In this mental ward, were these, did they protect you somehow, or that you didn't work on patients that were really, really dangerous, or especially since you're just learning this, or how did they do that? They
gave us pretty much anybody that was available. They did not let us work, for some reason, with any substance abuse people. Alcoholics or drug addicts and stuff. I don't know why they limited, because I don't see them necessarily as the most dangerous ones there. But anyway, mine was a catatonic schizophrenic. So, and a catatonic, if most people know, are people that don't move a whole lot, oftentimes don't talk for a long period of time. They just kind of sit. And she would walk around and stuff and eat her meals and things like that, but she didn't talk to me. Except one time in the day room, she finally sat across from me in the day room. We're the only two there. She's about 12 feet across the room from me. We're sitting in these overstuffed couches, and I'm short, so my feet are up off the floor, but that's how I had to do it. And all of a sudden, she told me she wanted to talk. I said, oh, this is great. I thought, a breakthrough. Anyway, then I waited about 30 seconds probably, didn't say a thing. I wasn't trying to provoke her or get her upset. But she jumped up, raced across the room, grabbed me around the neck, with her thumbs on the front.
No, the air
and just
pipe.
gradually got tighter, tighter, tighter.
Oh.
So I told her, I said, Janet, I'm going to scream. We weren't supposed to hurt the patient, right? So I couldn't start prying her hands off me. But anyway, I finally screamed, and the instructor and several other people came and got her off me.
Oh, boy.
Then they put her in a tray chair. That was the punishment.
Oh, well then, like a...
It's like a high chair for adults, yeah.
Keep
they're
the tray,
strapped
keep
in,
their hands down.
with a tray in front of them.
Oh, and then
so
you had
they
to go
can't
back and
get
do another one another day. You didn't just
Another
leave the
patient?
psych where you kept doing the job you were doing, seeing another
you
patient.
had to keep doing it, yeah.
Oh, that would have been a little bit
But it
frightening.
was just an eerie place to be in the psych ward, and I loved it because I'd seen the movie Sybil, and I knew that that's what I wanted for my career, believe it or not. So anyway.
And thinking about that, because I saw the movie, it was a very interesting movie and an interesting book, but what about it that really enticed you? Was it the multi-personality types that are in there somewhere?
Yeah. I remember later, after my Navy career, I didn't see a lot of multiple personalities in the Navy. That isn't too much of an issue with the servicemen. It's usually a women's thing anyway, in most cases. But anyway, yeah, after, what was I going to say? Yeah.
To me, the one thing about that even in that movie, but most cases I would assume, is that the trauma that happens to them is so severe that it just splits off in order to survive.
Yeah. They use it as a coping mechanism, for sure.
They let people...
Yeah, one of them we had, we were used to admitting, we had one unit in Colorado where I worked after I retired from the Navy and stuff where they were all multiples. That was the hospital unit. So you had to learn a lot of names because every person has a whole, what they call system.
Yes.
And one of them came in on admission and I had to admit her and I said, can you tell me about your system? She gives me this spreadsheet with all her alters listed, or her personalities, in other words, all listed and the attributes of them. So Susie might be suicidal, Roberta might be real religious, Karen might be angry all the time, Sonia or whoever might be a baby alter that crawls on the floor. They have all different
Just
systems.
think about that for a second, because I've never heard that before. Just think about the fact that the person has got to be objective enough to be able to list all of the people inside her and what their traits are. Mm-hmm. That other person that's the one in charge or the one that's kind of standing back and watching the freak show that goes on, oh my goodness, you should have written books. You could still write books.
I could still write books about that place.
Oh my goodness.
We had one girl that had a bird altar, and she would sit up on top of the fireplace mantle in the day room. The mantle was about 5.5 feet high, and she was real little. She was about the size of a little gymnast, and she was pretty agile too. So she would get up there and perch up there and kind of crouch down like a bird. Oh. She would sit up there for hours. And then when she was done, she would just jump down. She'd be fine. But anyway,
oh
that was just
goodness.
what she did.
Did you ever, in any of those multiple places, get back to the source of the trauma to find out why the split?
The doctors, the therapists that they had, tried to do hypnosis on a lot of them. Uh-huh. So they would do hypnosis. A lot of time putting them in restraints to do hypnosis, just so they wouldn't harm themselves.
Right. But that to me would be trying hypnosis being one of them naturally, but to get back to when the initial trauma took place, as you saw, when you saw Sybil, you kind of saw where that started. But even with Three Faces of Eve, when that came out, how popular that was, and Joanne Woodward won an Oscar for that because of, again, the three people that were inside her. It is a very interesting thing. I can see why you would be interested in that. And most of that, I'm making a generalization here, that with multiples, usually they're not violent because they've had to learn to live
No,
together.
most of the harm that they would do would be to themselves.
Yes,
Suicidal.
Yeah.
They weren't homicidal. They weren't out to get you and choke you like my catatonic girl was.
Right.
They weren't that type. But yeah, they just hurt themselves.
Even with the catatonic, if the fact that she's moving around, she's there, but she's not there, as to, no way to find out what is really going on inside her head because she's unable to even explain, here's what I'm hearing, here's what's happening. That's intriguing also to want to know that stuff. So and you worked with pediatrics at that time too, and that was at a specific hospital that you would go to work with the young?
Pediatric psych, you mean?
Or no, just pediatrics.
Yeah, that was in Milwaukee. We did 12 weeks in Milwaukee Children's Hospital.
And were they all different types of illnesses?
Oh, they were.
Diseases?
Yeah, they were all different things. One of the big diagnoses up there, which was real unusual, was failure to thrive.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Parents that didn't take care of the kid, or a baby, say a 6-month-old, that would be dehydrated for 4 or 5 days, not drinking, and a mother would finally bring them in. Well, they're at death's door when a baby's gone 4 days being dehydrated. I mean, that's too long.
Well, and you think about the fact that a baby is so dependent upon the parent to take care of their needs. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they have been that neglected or ignored, that they are at death's door because nobody's feeding them, nobody's giving them anything to eat or drink. Oh my stars, that is just
that was a real big thing. We had a lot of scoliosis patients too, curvature of the spine. Mm-hmm. That was a big thing. They invented the Milwaukee brace at that hospital.
Oh wow.
The Milwaukee brace is a brace that scoliosis patients often wear. It goes from the chin all the way down to their pelvis and their back to help straighten them out.
Now, does it ever eventually get straight so they can remove that, or do they have to wear that all the time?
They can eventually remove it.
Okay.
They're not perfect usually when they end up, but better than they were.
Well, before we leave this portion, because this is so interesting to me, as you well know, but I remember you telling me that when you were, early on in your nursing, that you got a cadaver.
Yes. I loved anatomy physiology.
Oh, my
That was my favorite science class, if you want to call it that. So that was our freshman year. We had a whole year of anatomy physiology. Yeah, the first semester was mostly anatomy, learning bones and the skeleton and that kind of thing. And then the second semester was more the physiology, how all the systems work. But also in the first semester, we did cat. It wasn't a cadaver, really. It was a dead cat. Each of us had a dead cat, which was hard for me because I love animals. So this was upsetting. One of my classmates even pierced her cat's ears so she could make earrings. Anyway, get earrings. Anyway.
Dear me.
So we did cats. So we, worked with them, and we had labs that were 3 hours long. So it was a pretty intense lab. So once you got in there, you worked really hard.
But are you by yourself in there then with the cadaver? Cutting it open?
So the second semester then was the actual human cadavers. So no, they were all out. We had a big lab. So there were several cadavers, one on each table for each student. So we each had our own cadaver. One thing our instructor did that he shouldn't have done, which is kind of unethical, is he told us the names of our cadavers.
Oh, no.
In other words, individuals that had donated their bodies to science, right?
Oh, wow.
So anyway, he told me the name of my cadaver, and it sounded very familiar to me.
Oh, don't tell me.
And I thought, I've heard that name before. So when I went home the next weekend to visit or whatever, I told my mom, I said, have you ever heard of, and I used the doctor's name, who was my cadaver.
Yeah.
And I said, have you ever heard of, she was shocked. And I said, why are you so shocked? She goes, that was my OB doctor when your brother was born.
No.
Mm-hmm. So my cadaver had delivered my younger brother about 15 years earlier. So.
And if I recall, it was kind of a horrendous delivery because your mother was quite small.
Yeah, she weighed 125 and she had an 11-pound baby. So yeah, he was a big one.
And she would never forget the doctor. It didn't make it any easier for her. Oh, yeah, my goodness. Yeah, that is kind of payback, if you will. When you talked about the fact that you have learning to in the cadaver how things work. When I read Agony and the Ecstasy, it's about Michelangelo. And Michelangelo would he would want to get to go into the dead room, and the priest would not let him, but they would leave the key on the desk so that, in other words, they were really saying, take it when we're gone. He would go into the dead room, and he only had 4-hour candles. So he would light a candle, and then when it burned down, he'd have to leave, of course. But the fact that that's why David and all his other sculpting is so real is because he could go into the cadaver and lift out the organ and see how the ligaments and the tendons were attached. And that's why his sculpting isn't just plain alabaster or marble. It's actually got veins.
Right.
It was from, again, having the opportunity to do that with a cadaver. So you were able to go in there just to see how things were connected.
Yeah, the only part of the body we didn't get to do was the head and face, and that was to keep the confidentiality of the cadaver.
Of course.
Although our instructor, like I said, told us the names of them, which wasn't good. But anyway, yeah, the face was covered with like a white rag and then covered with a plastic bag, and it was tied around the neck. So we couldn't see anything above the neck. So we did the neck down to the toes. I mean, we basically had the rest of the body.
Did you ever think of, since we're there now in this cadaver, ever think about going into forensics or anything like that, since that's such a big deal now?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Oh, wow. You could have been
I was already partway through nursing and stuff, and I thought, no, I don't think I want to switch.
Oh, yeah. Midstream is tough. So you're getting your nursing training. So what led up to getting into the Navy at this point in time?
Okay. This was my second year of nursing school, and I called my parents one evening just to chat. Nothing particular to tell them, but I mentioned that we had a Navy nurse recruiter coming the next day to speak to us. It was voluntary to go to it. It wasn't mandatory. And I just kind of threw that out there to my parents to see what they'd say. And they're both talking to me on different phones at home, and they're like, oh, that would be such a great idea. Join the Navy, you'll see the world. And they were always big travelers because, like teachers have summers off.
Yeah.
So we always did pretty extensive family vacations. So I was used to traveling a lot with them, and that was important in their lives too. So anyway, I thought, well, they want me to go. I thought they'd want to keep me around a while, but they were like, go ahead and see the world.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to the recruiter thing the next day, and the recruiter talked to us. A few of us were interested, not too many people. I think most wanted to stay in the area. And a lot of them had boyfriends there and stuff, so they didn't want to leave. But anyway, one other girl and I for sure were going to sign up. We didn't have to sign up in advance, but they said, if you're really interested, we'll take you on a trip to Pensacola, Florida. And you'll get to see the Blue Angels fly.
Okay.
And you'll get to have dates with aviation officer candidates.
And nothing wrong with that.
That was good. So anyway, so we got flown down to Pensacola from Iowa and stuff, and so we did see the Blue Angels. They had dates for us with these aviation officer candidates.
Wow.
Ones that were single, of course. But they had put our pictures up on a board down there and let the aviation officer candidates kind of pick their date ahead of time. So anyway, we went to this, and it was a champagne fountain, and I mean, it was classy.
Oh, how
so
fun.
For us little girls that were only like 19 years old from
Out of
Iowa.
Down there with the big boys.
That was a big deal.
Of course it is.
And so we both signed up for the Navy, of course.
There was something you mentioned also about a dream sheet.
Oh, yeah.
That I'd never heard of either.
When we did sign up, signed on the dotted line, and we got our commission at graduation from nursing school, they had us sign up on a dream sheet. A dream sheet, and I think they still use them, is basically what your preference or request would be if you were going to join the service. And not that you always get your request. It's just what you would like. That's your dream sheet. So anyway, my first request was Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay.
And the recruiter told me, she said, don't put that down. Everybody wants Bethesda, so you're not going to get it. And I got it.
There you go.
That was cool. Yeah.
Well,
Bethesda's the only hospital I really knew about. I mean, again, I grew up in Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so far from any ocean or coastal Navy base or anything like that. So that was really special. I thought Bethesda is great. The presidents go there. It can't get much better than that, right? So anyway, so I went to Bethesda for 2 years. Loved it.
Oh, I guess so.
Very VIP command. I mean, everything's by the book.
So all military in Bethesda.
Navy.
Yeah, okay, just all
the
Navy.
name at the time was National Naval Medical Center.
Oh, okay.
And they've since changed it, which I don't like. They've changed it now to calling it Walter Reed.
Oh, that I've heard of, yeah.
Remember when President Trump went there for COVID
Yeah.
or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they started calling it Walter Reed. And I'm like, what? Walter Reed was a hospital in downtown D.C., not in Bethesda. And it was really old and dilapidated, and they finally tore it down.
And then gave this name.
Yeah, just like Andrews Air Force Base, they now call Joint Base Andrews. It's not Andrews Air Force Base. So they've changed some names of things in the area. But anyway, Bethesda was primarily Navy when I was there.
So, and how long you were there? 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Now, when you left there, do you have choices of where you want to go, be stationed, etc.?
You have some choices. What I did, actually, I did my 2 years at Bethesda, 6 months on med-surg, mostly orthopedics, because I didn't get to work psych initially. They don't want a new nurse working in a specialty. They want you to have a general education first. So I did 6 months on busy ortho ward with lots of amputees. Mm-hmm. And then I got to go to psych. So the next year and a half, I was in psych.
At Bethesda?
At Bethesda, right.
So did you have a lot of PTSD or what was...
Yeah, it was PTSD, depression. Yeah,
Okay.
That was the main thing. The multiple personality thing didn't enter into the Navy stuff very much.
Was there success, or was it mainly medication for those PTSD guys at that particular time?
Well, it was medication and therapy, both, and stuff. And then they'd have to decide what to do with them, whether the person was able to go back on active duty after their hospitalization, or whether they should be boarded out of the military.
Oh.
And get out, because if their psych problem was that severe, they didn't want them on active duty.
Exactly.
So.
What a tough thing to work with, but I'm sure most of them really wanted to go back. But again,
we had one admission one day, and I remember everybody laughing in Morning Report. This was at Bethesda. They gave, they told about the admissions during the night, and they told how long active duty they'd already had, if they'd been in for 10 years or 5 years or whatever. One guy had 8 hours continuous active duty, and he was already on the psych ward, so that was not a good thing.
Goodness. Yeah, that not a place for him.
So anyway, so I think he got boarded out.
Get out as soon as possible. So then, where did you end up going after you left Bethesda?
After Bethesda, I actually got out of the service for a few months.
Really?
I had done my full commitment, which was 2 years active duty. Did that, and I went back home to Iowa. I was going to live in Milwaukee, I think was my choice at that time. And was going to go to Milwaukee, and a friend of mine from Bethesda called, a male nurse that I was good buddies with in the psych area and stuff. And he says, why don't you get back in? He says, there's all kinds of fun stuff we can do, going these different places and stuff. So I thought, okay. So he had an idea we should go to this class down in, where was it, Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
So I thought, cool, okay, well, I'll sign back up. So anyway, so I got back in. It's called broken service. It's not recommended you do that in the military, but I did it. So anyway, got back in.
Yeah.
So I was at Jacksonville for a while, and then went to Mayport, Florida, and then to Great Lakes, Illinois, then to San Diego for a lot of years, because that's such a big Navy command anyway with Balboa Hospital and stuff. So I worked at the old Balboa and the new one, both. The old one was called the Pink Palace.
Really?
Years ago. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't remember hearing that.
It's in Balboa Park. Yeah, the Pink Palace, because it was pink stucco. Real big,
of course.
Pink building.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I worked a long time in San Diego, and then during Desert Storm, I was in San Francisco, living on Treasure Island.
Oh.
Great place to live.
Now, that's like, where's that compared from Alcatraz? Is that an island?
Look right out at it.
Oh, really?
Treasure Island is, if you take the Oakland Bay Bridge from the city of Oakland, going across to San Francisco, there's a little island called Yerba Buena.
Okay.
Island in the middle. So there's an exit off the bridge that you can go down to the base. And most civilians don't do that because it's a military base.
Yeah.
Anyway, the rest of the people would just go straight across to San Francisco. But my room at the BOQ, officers' quarters, looked right out onto Alcatraz, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge. I could see everything from my room. It was fantastic.
Well, how big is the island? What's on there?
It was a base, I don't know, 3 or 4 acres. It wasn't particularly big.
And it was just a base, a military base.
Yeah.
With a hospital and...
Oh, there was no housing, and there's no hospital there, and it wasn't a complete base where they had a commissary and all that stuff.
So what were you doing while you were there?
I was working actually at Letterman Army Hospital in San Francisco.
Okay.
During Desert Storm, the Navy combined a lot of services, or the military did, just for the sake of, because they had to ship people to the Mideast. Okay. That's where they needed them. So anyway, a lot of the Navy people were at Oakland Navy Hospital at the time. But the psych people, again, so that was my thing, the psych people were going to be over at Letterman Army Hospital, which is in the city. That's near Golden Gate Park.
Right.
Near the Golden Gate Bridge. So anyway, I worked actually in San Francisco.
I see.
So at nights I slept on Treasure Island and worked in San Francisco.
Oh.
And I had to check with the MPs every day before I went to work because the protesters were protesting. You know, they didn't like the military up there.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
No blood for oil. That was the big saying during Desert Storm.
Oh, because of that.
And anyway, so I had to deal with the MPs, and the MPs would tell me when the coast was clear, and I could leave my room in the BOQ, take my uniform in the back seat. You couldn't wear your uniform off base because you were a target.
Oh, my stars.
So I had to take my uniform along, then change once I got to Letterman Army Hospital. And then I worked in the psych ward.
Well, that sounds a little bit...
At Letterman.
Scary as well, because you're always having to check to make sure it's safe and is the coast clear?
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, the MPs had my room number down because they knew I worked night shift a lot of the time, not all the time. They knew I had worked a lot of nights, so they would call me and say, "Okay, it's clear. Come on down," because they were trying to burn cop cars and everything on the Bay Bridge. The protesters.
My goodness sakes!
So it was pretty rough.
Oh my goodness, I would say so. So how long were you at Treasure Island then?
What was it? About 11 months altogether.
And then from there?
From there, went back to San Diego, which actually was still my home of record, really, because I'd been there right before I went to San Francisco and stuff. And then I eventually retired.
And you did that while you were down in San Diego?
Yes.
What did you retire as? What was your rank? Because I'm sure you moved.
Commander, which is... Navy ranks are very different from the other. I don't know why they don't all have the same name across the board, but they don't. So a Navy commander equals a lieutenant colonel.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be the same as a lieutenant colonel in the Army or the Marine Corps.
Okay. Well, that's pretty darn good. Once you retired from Navy, did you continue nursing for a while?
Or? Oh, yeah, civilian.
Oh, you did?
And that's when I got into working with the multiple personalities and stuff more.
Oh, here in California or where?
Colorado, mostly.
Oh, Colorado. Do they have, is that manager? Isn't there one manager?
There's managers in Kansas.
Right, but
I don't think this was related to managers necessarily.
But there is a specific place in Colorado that just does multiple.
Yeah, what they call it, National Center for Treatment of Dissociative Disorders, or some fancy name like that.
So that you still were interested in that? So how long did you stay working at that?
About 4 years, I think.
Okay.
I came back to California and stuff. So.
Yeah. And you worked at a hospital here for a brief time?
St. Joseph's in Orange.
Yeah. Was it a specific ward there, or were you still in psych? Still psych ward. You probably ran into one of my relatives. Right. I used to work for a psychiatrist that was the chief of the mental ward there, George Hayter. Do you remember that name?
Hayter?
Hayter. Hayter, George Hayter. I worked for him when I was getting my degree, because his office was within walking distance of St. Joseph's. But and my sister-in-law ended up spending a few weeks.
Oh yeah.
In there, getting herself out of.
Yeah, that was a good place. We did ECT there too, shock treatment, which you don't see done a lot of places anymore. But
no, it is a nice big hospital, and Chalk is right next to that as well. So, and then how did you end up getting, because you lived in San Diego, but when you moved to start working in Orange, did you live in the area
I moved
here?
up here, yeah. My brother and sister-in-law moved from Colorado to Orange County.
Okay.
So that's why I came back from San Diego to come up to Orange County again and stuff. So I worked, yeah, at St. Joseph. And then my last nursing job was actually at Westminster. It's a little called TRC, Treatment Residential Center or something like that. Anyway, it was an adult psych unit. I was
Okay.
director of nursing there
Oh, okay.
in a psych unit. It was just one unit, but I was a director of nursing of it.
How long have you been here in the village then? When did you move into the village?
Long time ago, 10 years ago or so.
Okay. Okay.
My
And,
parents were here first.
oh, they were here. That's how you got familiar with Laguna Woods. So, and you've been here 10 years, you said? And I know that you're very active and busy and everything. So, were you still working when you moved in here? Or were you retired by that time?
I still worked, not very long, a few months, I think.
Okay.
And then I realized I wanted to quit and kind of take care of my parents. So really
Oh.
my last job was being a caregiver to both my mom and dad. So,
Mm. Well, you were definitely equipped for it.
yeah.
You definitely knew what you were doing.
I don't recommend taking care of your parents to anybody. That's a hard job.
It is. I would think that would be really hard. But, and did you get involved here in the village pretty quickly? Or?
Not so much when they were still alive and stuff, but now I do a lot. I mean, between church things, with choir and music and singing and solos and duets and singing for the American Legion with Veterans Day and Memorial Day. I'm in the Republican Club.
Okay.
So I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know you're always busy doing things and you like that activity. We all need to be doing something to keep the old gray matter moving around. But so you found a home, if you will, from some, especially American Legion, where with the other vets. And I'm surprised. They do have an active American Legion here, but when we were doing something for Memorial Day, we wanted to honor the vets, and there was no way you could just get a list of vets that lived in the village. And I remember at that time saying, when you're moving in, why don't they have a check thing that would just say vet?
That would be good.
Wouldn't that be something? Because to me, they need to be honored, but if you have no way of contacting them unless they're involved in American Legion or VFW.
And even in recruiting new members. Our group
Yes.
needs new members, really, because
Yeah.
so many of them are dying off.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just old.
They're getting old.
So, we sure need new members. So that would be very helpful to
Yeah.
have a list.
Well, and we did I met one of the gentlemen that lives outside the village, but he's very active with the VFW that's local here. And they have a meeting of vets at the Laguna Cafe on Fridays in the morning, I think. And they're from all different wars. And again, as you say, the Vietnam vets are now the ones that are getting up in age, and very few World War II left. But now there's from the Iraq and through the Afghanistan and so on from what I was told, that they said that the support group that they have is not so much of sharing what their experiences were or any of that. It's just a matter of there's so much paperwork to go through for anything, whether it's going to the VA hospital, getting, their
Your
perks
glasses
and
or
any of
contacts
that.
or whatever,
That
yeah.
they have someone there that can walk them through that's what they mean by the support. But I've interviewed a few guys here that live in the village. One of the guys was the ship commander for a couple of different ships during Vietnam, and very interesting again to get the perspective from them, and also not just their experiences there, but the political aspect of what was going on at the time. This one gentleman, when he became an ensign, it was signed by Dwight D. Eisenhower, but then it was JFK, and then of course eventually Johnson, that with his Vietnam stuff. So that when I heard him talk about the different things, and that to me was just so exciting because of the fact, again, you see a whole political, how different politicians, different presidents act in time of, war or what became.
Now, in our Legion meetings, though, we're supposed to be non-political. And you will get censored either by other members in the group or by one of the leaders if you start talking politics at a Legion meeting.
I imagine that would be touchy for sure because everybody has their own experiences.
It can get pretty contentious sometimes, especially with the election in November. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can get pretty rough.
How does you have to have somebody there kind of saying like, okay, now we got to settle this down because that's off the table?
Well, sometimes our commander of our post even gets started to get a little political, so some of us would sit there going, time to him.
You definitely need referees for that. Yeah, everybody has an opinion and they've had experience.
I mean, I love politics. I could talk about politics all day, but yeah, we aren't supposed to do it in the Legion meeting. So.
Well, I'm sure that you get a chance to do some of that when you're in the Republican Party gatherings and stuff.
Well, that's a different ballgame.
But you're all the same.
Yeah, that's very different.
I remember a couple of friends of mine that when I lived in Aliso Viejo, and they are from Argentina, and they were very Democrat and very liberal, and I don't even remember which election it was. It was quite a few years ago now, and so she had said to me, "You want to come over when we watch the returns?" And she said their friends X and X, and these 3 or 4 couples that were going to be there. And I said, "Are they all Democrats and liberals?" Well, yeah. And I said, what fun would that be then? I mean, if you're not even going to have a few on one side or the other saying, I said, what's the point? You're all of like mind, so enjoy, that too. So anyway, but I'm excited to hear that you've gotten, involved in so many different things.
I didn't get to show my picture.
Oh, you have to show your picture. Because when did this happen now? Where were you stationed?
This was 1992. So we're back. Sorry, people. We're moving back to 1992.
Back to the future. That's it. Yeah.
Right after Desert Storm. I heard there was a dinner with General Colin Powell in San Diego, La Jolla, to be exact.
Oh, yes.
And stuff. It was $50, which at that time seemed like a lot of money.
Yes.
And stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to this. So anyway, went to this dinner meeting where he was going to speak. And I thought, I'm going to get my picture taken with him. So
hold it up just a little bit because it's glaring right now. There, now I can see it. Oh, my goodness.
I didn't know anybody else that was there, but I thought, I'm going to stand up and get my picture taken. So I'm going to tap him on the shoulder and say, look at the camera, right? Well, I go up, tap him on the shoulder. He's eating his lunch, by the way. We're at the table.
Yeah.
You see the glass.
You thought you were probably going to offer him some more food.
And he was great. He was so nice. He got up out of his chair, pushed his chair in, and said, "Hi, I'm Colin Powell."
Like you didn't know.
No kidding, right?
You know what?
So cool.
Look at it's. I think I'm going to use the right term now. Look at all the salad. Is that what they call it?
The what?
Isn't it salad? What are all these things?
Salad.
I don't know. Why do I have that term then?
Well, there are medals.
I know they are, but don't they have a name for that?
Ribbons.
Yeah, but there's this slang, and I always thought it was salad.
I haven't heard that one. Sorry.
Because that's all I saw at first was all of the ribbons and medals and so on, because he's definitely covered.
Yeah. Anyway, so he sat back down because I come about to his waist when we're standing up. I mean, he's super tall. And anyway, so I got the picture taken, enlarged the picture, got the matting and so on. Then a couple years later, he was doing book signing for his autobiography called My American Journey.
Oh, wow.
In Colorado, and that's when I was in Colorado. And anyway, so I went to that book signing and took this picture, at which time then he signed the matting of this with his signature.
Oh.
So that says C.L. Powell for Colin Luther Powell.
And only you would be able to know that because that is tough.
He can't read it.
And was he kind of smiling then when he saw that picture saying, wow,
I had
you're
him do
back.
the book first. He signed the book,
Oh.
autographed the book, and then I had him do the picture.
Yeah. Think of what would have happened had he gotten to run for president. I know you said that he was thinking of it.
I would have quit nursing and run for him. I mean, been on his campaign.
Yeah. He was quite the man. I think he was liked by almost everyone. Mm-hmm. So he would have probably gotten to be no problem getting into office at that time. Any other?
Maybe I could have been his press secretary.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, but any other, decorated people that you remember meeting or anything?
I ran into a few I got to go to an inaugural ball when I was at Bethesda way back when.
Did you wear the gown and everything?
No, we had to wear our dress blues.
Oh, you did?
So we had to look like Navy people. Because I went as a nurse, for the Navy, so I had to wear that. With a Red Cross armband up on the more on the shoulder part. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
was that fun, though?
Yeah, that was fun. So I got autographs from Art Linkletter, Bob Hope,
wow,
and Jim Neighbors. John,
Jim
the
Neighbors,
guy
the guy that sings.
Whatever his name is, John Neighbors.
Well, you could have traveled with Bob Hope to the troops. You could have sung.
Yeah, I could have done.
You could have done so many
I went
things.
to a couple of his shows during my lifetime, too.
Oh, did you?
Because he'd come to the hospitals, usually around Christmas time.
Wow.
So,
there's one thing, and I don't know if you do much of that here, but I did this guy that Renee, that I've met here that's active in the BFW, he plays multiple instruments, plays guitar and sings with his group, and they're called the Flashbacks. Can you imagine that? And they play over at the Laguna Cafe, usually once a month outside. But they also, before the pandemic, they would play at the VA hospital in Long Beach. And they would go into all the rooms with all the military there. He said the saddest thing is some of them, are without limbs and so on, but family, nobody visits them. And so he said it's just heart-wrenching to go there, but they're so excited when they come and play rock and roll, whatever music that they're used to hearing and so on. And of course, when the pandemic came, then of course they couldn't go in there, and I don't know whether they've started that up again or not, but that's something you could have done.
Yeah.
You could have been there. Well, no, you need 3 for Andrews Sisters to do the Boogie Woogie.
Those songs are before my time, really.
That's true. That's
Andrews
true.
Sisters.
I'm really, now you know my age, but I do remember hearing all that. Well, maybe I do because of my parents listening to things like that. I don't know. Let's hope it's that. So, anyway, anything else that pops into your mind? Any other, should we say, horror stories about some of your experiences? To me,
One guy in the Navy, this is at Bethesda, too. I had to not reprimand him, but I had to encourage him to get up and go to group or something like that. It wasn't too big a request, but he was angry at me for making him get up out of his rack, which is a bed, and go to group. So he knew he couldn't hit me. I heard this later. He went in the men's restroom on the psych ward and took the balls off the pool table, the hard balls, and threw them at the mirrors in the men's restroom and broke out probably 7 or 8 different mirrors by throwing the pool balls. So when he got confronted on that later by me and by some of the docs and stuff too, he said, I knew I couldn't throw it at her because she's an officer. So instead I broke the mirrors.
Oh my goodness, aren't you fortunate for that?
That was one story.
Oh my goodness. Well, again, the anger and not knowing what to do with that. Well,
at least you took it out on the mirrors.
Exactly. But still, that glass shattering, can you imagine the noise? And that could have
he was really furious. And it wasn't that big a request that I had for him, really. I didn't think. It was like going to group. It wasn't a big deal. Anyway.
Well, I'll probably bump into you. Well, I know I'll see you at church for sure.
Absolutely.
But also the fact that you're so active in the community, I applaud you for that because you're an asset to Laguna Woods, to the Republican Party, to the American Legion, and all the above. So, thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you.
I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife,
I could thank the Lord above to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there is no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea.
From Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say,
and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there is no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there is no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.